Hey everybody, welcome back to the deep dive. We're going to take a deep dive into some legal and financial documents today. It's really interesting stuff. We've got historical legal documents, court survival guides, financial contracts. We've even got a bit of philosophy thrown in there.
Yeah, it's a real mix, but there's this underlying theme I see of personal sovereignty and financial freedom.
That's right. So let's start with one of the historical documents, the 5,000-year leap. It talks about how the founding fathers viewed debt. They saw it as a major obstacle to freedom, almost like being controlled by another country.
They really did, and they stressed the importance of paying off debt quickly to build a more prosperous future.
Yeah, for everyone, not just for themselves. I think we can all relate to that feeling of debt hanging over us, right? It can really weigh you down and keep you from pursuing your goals and dreams.
Absolutely, and this source really drives home how strongly the founding fathers felt about that. They considered debt almost as bad as being conquered.
That's a powerful statement. Now let's jump into something a bit more modern, the Uniform Commercial Code, or UCC.
Ah, yes, the UCC. We've got a couple of sources here that dive into this, the Commerce Study Guide and Dealing with Presentments. They suggest that really understanding the UCC can be a game changer, particularly when it comes to finances.
Okay, so how could knowing about the UCC help someone in a practical way?
Well, imagine you're dealing with a debt collector who's using some pretty aggressive tactics. Knowing your rights under the UCC could give you the leverage you need to push back, maybe even level the playing field a bit.
Interesting. So you're saying this knowledge could empower people to stand up for themselves.
That's the idea. Of course, it's important to remember that these sources offer some pretty unconventional interpretations of the UCC, so you always want to proceed with caution and do your own research.
Right. Always good advice. Now let's move on to something that always kind of throws me for a loop, this whole straw man concept. It's mentioned in To Be a Man and the Commerce Study Guide.
Oh, the straw man. Yeah, that's a bit of a head scratcher. It's this idea that our legal names, the ones written in all caps on official documents, are actually separate from our true selves.
Like we have a legal doppelganger. So how does that even work in practice?
Well, according to these sources, recognizing this separate legal status of the straw man might allow individuals to challenge things like debts and other obligations that are usually linked to their legal name. It's like creating a separation between your true self and those financial pressures.
Wow, that's fascinating. So there's this potential to kind of create a legal firewall between yourself and the system.
It's an interesting concept to think about for sure, but remember, these are unconventional interpretations. Always tread carefully and definitely consult with a legal professional before trying anything like this in real life.
Good point. So we've got debt from the Founding Fathers, the UCC, and now this straw man concept. What's next?
Well, we have several sources that offer strategies for challenging court jurisdiction, 62 plus ways to shut down a court case, and common law abatement are a couple of examples.
Challenging court jurisdiction. That sounds a bit intimidating.
I know, it can seem that way, but think of it like this. If you're in a situation where you believe a court doesn't have the authority to rule on something that affects you, these sources suggest that understanding the legal procedures and using very specific language could give you the power to challenge that court's authority.
So it's like knowing the rules of the game and how to play it strategically.
That's a good way to put it. It's about knowing your rights and using them to your advantage.
This is starting to feel like we're building a toolkit one piece at a time.
You're right, and each tool has a specific purpose. Now let's talk about a really practical tool, affidavits. Sources like Affidavit Sections 120 and Affidavit of Ownership really drive home the importance of these documents.
Affidavits, so those are the written statements made under oath, right?
That's right. And what's fascinating is, according to these sources, a well-written affidavit can be a powerful tool. You can use them to clearly state facts, assume ownership, or clarify your position in a legal dispute. It's all about clarity and documentation.
It's like having a legal document that backs up your claims.
Ah.
Okay, so far we've gone from the Founding Fathers' views on debt to understanding the UCC, this straw man thing, and now affidavits. It's quite a journey.
It is, and there's more to come. Now let's talk about something a little different, land patents and allodial title. The Handbook Land Patents Allodial Title explains this concept.
Allodial title, I'm not familiar with that one.
Well, imagine owning a piece of land completely free and clear with no strings attached. That's essentially what allodial title represents: absolute ownership. Yeah. And this source suggests that understanding this concept could open up possibilities for how you view and potentially claim ownership of your property.
Wow, that's interesting. So it's like the ultimate form of property ownership.
You could say that.
Yeah.
Now, before we move on, any thoughts or questions about what we've covered so far?
Well, it's a lot to take in, but I'm starting to see how these ideas and documents can help people to take control of their finances and potentially reduce some of that daily financial stress.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you might have more options than you think. Now, let's wrap up this section with a look at the executor letter. Understanding the executor office explains how it works.
Okay, executor letter. What's that all about?
Think of it as a way to declare your control over your estate, which includes everything you own, both personal and financial. You're essentially stepping into the role of CEO of your own life. This source even suggests that you can use the executor letter to communicate with government agencies on your own terms.
So it's about taking charge of your life and your affairs.
That's the idea. But remember, always do your research and talk to legal and financial experts before making any decisions based on these concepts.
Solid advice. This deep dive has been incredible so far. We've uncovered some fascinating stuff about personal sovereignty and financial freedom, and I can't wait to see what else we find as we continue.
Me neither. We'll be back after a short break to explore even more. Stay tuned. Welcome back.
So before the break, we were talking about this executor letter. It's all about taking control of your own affairs.
Yeah.
Being in the driver's seat.
Yeah, and that seems to be a recurring theme in these sources, this emphasis on self-education and taking responsibility for your own financial well-being.
Right. It's like they're saying, don't just sit back and wait for things to happen. Get informed, understand your rights, and take action.
Yeah.
It's not just theory. These sources are full of practical advice and strategies.
Yeah, we've talked about the UCC and affidavits, but it seems like there's a lot more to unpack.
Absolutely. For example, they even offer tips on asserting your rights in court, which I think a lot of people would find useful, especially if they're dealing with some kind of financial pressure.
Yeah, that could be a real game changer. It's like they're giving us this toolkit to navigate these complex systems. Instead of hammers and screwdrivers, it's knowledge and legal strategies. I like that analogy. And the end goal is to empower you to take charge of your financial future. Just imagine feeling confident in navigating tricky financial situations and avoiding those common pitfalls that cause so much stress.
That sounds pretty good to me. But let's be real, some of the stuff in these sources seems, well, a little out there. Kind of risky, even.
You're right to be cautious. It's not about throwing out the rulebook and going rogue. Remember, responsible and strategic action is key. These sources encourage you to be proactive, but they always stress informed decision-making and, if needed, seeking legal counsel.
Okay, so informed action and a bit of common sense. Got it. So a lot of people struggle with debt. Do these sources have anything to say about that?
Oh, absolutely. Debt's a major stressor for so many people, and many sources offer ways to challenge debt obligations, maybe even reduce or get rid of them entirely.
Now, that sounds really helpful, especially if we're talking about living with more options and less financial stress. What kind of strategies are we talking about?
Well, one thing they suggest is questioning the debt's validity. Basically, it means taking a hard look at the legal principles behind how debt is created and then examining the actual documents related to your debt. It suggests that maybe there are reasons to challenge the legitimacy of certain obligations, especially if the terms of the debt are unclear or if you think you were misled somehow.
So it's like saying, wait a minute, before I pay this, I need to make sure it's even a real debt.
Exactly. It's about being informed and proactive. And another strategy they talk about is using legal processes to challenge debt collection efforts, maybe dispute the amount, negotiate a settlement, or even look into bankruptcy if it comes to that. The main point is to understand your rights and use the legal system to your advantage, not be afraid of it.
It's like you're saying, don't just roll over and accept whatever the creditors tell you. You have options.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, challenging debt can have serious consequences, so always, always get professional advice from a qualified attorney before taking action.
Okay, informed action. Got it. Now, what about taxes? Everyone loves a good tax tip. I have a feeling these sources go beyond your typical deductions and credits.
Oh, they go way beyond. They dig into the whole legal framework of taxation. They suggest that if you really understand the history of tax laws and dig into those legal precedents, you might just find loopholes or inconsistencies that can work in your favor.
So it's not about cheating the system, but about knowing the rules of the game really, really well. and using them strategically.
That's a great way to put it. And they even propose ways to challenge tax assessments or negotiate with tax authorities. It all comes back to this idea you have rights when it comes to taxation, and you shouldn't be afraid to use them.
It's like they're handing you a magnifying glass and saying, go explore the tax code, see what you find.
That's a great image. Of course, tax laws are super complex, and anything you do needs to be done with careful consideration. Always consult a qualified tax attorney or accountant before trying anything too unconventional.
Right, playing it smart. So we've talked about debt, the UCC, and now this deep dive into taxes. All these practical strategies. It's a lot.
It is, and it all ties back to this core concept, personal sovereignty.
So what does that actually mean? Personal sovereignty. In a practical sense, I mean.
It's about recognizing that you have inherent rights and freedoms that no government or authority can just give or take away. They exist naturally, regardless of any legal system.
So it's like saying, I have certain rights just because I'm human, no matter what any law or government says.
Exactly. These sources suggest that when you embrace this idea, you can reclaim power over your own life. Make decisions that are truly in your best interest, free from those external pressures we've been talking about.
Like being the captain of your own ship.
Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. They argue that by asserting this personal sovereignty, you can challenge the authority of government agencies or corporations that might be overstepping their bounds.
So it's about setting boundaries and standing up for yourself.
Yeah.
Even when dealing with big institutions.
You got it. It's about recognizing your own inherent worth and value as an individual, not just a subject of the state or a number in a system. And that can be incredibly powerful, especially when you're up against financial challenges or feeling trapped by circumstances.
That's a powerful message for sure. But it's important to be realistic, right? I mean, you can't just declare yourself sovereign and expect everyone to fall in line.
Right. It's not about isolating yourself from society or rejecting all forms of authority. It's more about participating consciously, while still upholding your individual rights and freedoms. It's finding that balance between individual liberty and being a responsible member of society.
So it's like being an engaged citizen, but not blindly following the rules or accepting things as they are. It's about making conscious choices and being accountable for your actions.
Absolutely. So now that we've laid that groundwork about personal sovereignty, let's look at how these sources suggest asserting that in your financial and legal life.
Okay, I'm ready. Give me the strategies.
Okay, well, one that stands out is challenging jurisdiction. Remember we touched on that earlier?
Yeah, vaguely. Remind me what that is again.
It's basically questioning the authority of a court or a government agency to hear your case or enforce a law against you. Like saying, hey, wait a minute, you don't have the power to do that to me.
They offer different arguments and strategies to do this, often based on legal technicalities or principles in the Constitution.
So it's like knowing those legal loopholes and using them strategically.
It can be like that, but it's also about understanding the limits of government power, asserting your rights as an individual, making sure the system is playing by its own rules.
I like that. Holding the powerful accountable.
It's definitely a powerful concept. But keep in mind, challenging jurisdiction can be very complex and risky. You really need a solid grasp of the legal principles, and it's always best to seek expert advice before you attempt it.
So once again, informed action is key. Okay, so that's challenging jurisdiction. What else? They also emphasize using specific legal phrases to assert your rights and challenge assumptions. Terms like without prejudice, accepted for value, reserved rights. They claim these can shift the power dynamics in legal and financial situations.
Like a secret code that unlocks hidden doors in the legal system.
Maybe not that dramatic. But the idea is that using precise language allows you to communicate your intentions clearly and avoid being tricked into agreements you don't really want. Remember those financial pressures we talked about earlier? Well, this could be a way to prevent new ones from cropping up.
It's like being super careful about what you sign and making sure you don't accidentally waive your rights without realizing it.
That's the idea. Now remember, these strategies are based on unconventional readings of the law, and how effective they are is up for debate. So, as always, be careful and get legal counsel.
Right. We're not encouraging people to become armchair lawyers here.
Absolutely not. Knowledge is power, but it's important to use that power responsibly and know when to call in the professionals.
Okay, so we've talked strategy a lot. But do these sources give any practical advice on handling your finances day to day and asserting that financial independence?
They do. And one thing that stands out is the idea of creating and using trusts.
Trusts. I always thought those were only for rich families and estate planning.
That's a common misconception. Trust can be used for lots of things, like asset protection and financial privacy, regardless of how much money you have.
So it's like structuring your finances to have more control and security no matter your income level.
Exactly. And these sources suggest that by setting up and managing trusts correctly, you can potentially protect assets from creditors, reduce your taxes, and have more control over your finances in general.
That sounds pretty powerful. Are there different types of trusts they talk about?
Yeah, they mention several living trusts, asset protection trusts, charitable trusts. Each one has different features and benefits, so which one works best depends on your situation and your goals.
So it's like choosing the right tool from your financial toolkit.
Exactly. But keep in mind, establishing and managing trusts can get complicated. It requires understanding legal and financial principles, and you'll probably want professional help from attorneys or advisors who specialize in trusts.
So trusts are one tool. What else is in this financial toolkit they talk about?
They also highlight using private banking principles.
Private banking. That's just for the ultra wealthy, right?
It's often associated with the very wealthy, but these sources argue that private banking principles can actually apply to anyone who wants to take control of their money and protect their assets.
So it's about having that mindset of financial self-reliance no matter how much you make.
Precisely. They suggest that by learning how banks really operate and using private banking strategies, you can depend less on those traditional financial institutions and create more financial security for yourself.
That sounds really empowering. So what kind of strategies are we talking about here?
Well, they mention holding assets in your own name, diversifying your investments across different asset classes, even exploring alternative currencies like gold or silver.
So it's like taking a more hands-on approach to managing your money, looking beyond the typical banking system.
Exactly. They argue that by thinking like a banker and adopting some of these private banking strategies, you might actually be able to protect your assets from inflation, even government confiscation.
Wow. That's a pretty bold statement.
It is bold, but it fits with that whole theme of personal sovereignty and taking control of your financial future.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. Understanding the system, knowing your rights, taking proactive steps to protect yourself and your finances.
You're getting it. It's about recognizing you might have more options than you initially realize. Now remember, private banking strategies can be complex and require a good understanding of financial markets. It's always wise to get guidance from financial advisors who specialize in these areas, private banking and asset protection.
So informed action, like always.
Exactly. Now, we've covered a lot about financial strategies, but what about legal strategies? Do these sources offer any advice for protecting yourself and asserting your freedom in different situations?
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
Well, one thing they emphasize is challenging unlawful searches and seizures. Your Fourth Amendment rights.
Yes, the Fourth Amendment. Everybody loves their right to privacy.
Exactly. These sources stress the importance of understanding those rights and knowing how to stand up for yourself if you're ever in a situation with law enforcement, anything that could impact your freedom or your finances.
So it's about being prepared and knowing how to handle those potentially stressful encounters with law enforcement.
Right. They give specific advice on how to interact with police officers, say, during a traffic stop, including what to say and what not to say to protect your rights.
It's about being informed and assertive, but also respectful and cautious.
Exactly. They also talk about legal strategies for challenging unlawful searches and seizures in court, things like filing motions to suppress evidence and seeking legal redress for any violations of your rights. It's about holding law enforcement accountable.
That's a powerful reminder that we have rights, and we shouldn't be afraid to assert them. But let's face it, even if you know your rights, interacting with law enforcement can be really intimidating.
You're absolutely right. It's crucial to stay calm, be respectful, and assert your rights, but avoid escalating the situation or putting yourself at risk.
Right. It's not about provoking a confrontation or being a know-it-all.
No, not at all. It's about understanding your rights, asserting them peacefully, and if necessary, getting legal counsel involved.
Informed action and self-protection. I like that. So we've talked about challenging unlawful searches. What other legal strategies do they suggest?
One they emphasize is understanding and utilizing contracts.
Contracts. I always thought those were just for businesses and lawyers.
Contracts are everywhere. We encounter them all the time. Every time you buy something, rent an apartment, even use social media, you're entering into a contract.
So it's about paying attention to those agreements we're making, even in our everyday lives.
Exactly. And they really highlight the importance of reading and understanding any contract before you sign it, especially financial agreements, those financial pressures we talked about.
Hmm.
Well, being aware of what you're agreeing to can help you avoid unwanted debt or unfair terms.
Right. It's all about that fine print.
Absolutely. And they also talk about strategies for negotiating contracts to your advantage and for enforcing your rights if you need to.
It's like being a savvy negotiator and protecting your own interests.
Precisely. Now, contract law can get pretty complex.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to try writing my own legal documents.
Definitely not. It's always best to get professional legal advice if you're dealing with complex contracts or any kind of legal dispute.
Right. Good advice. So we've covered some pretty conventional legal strategies. What about the less conventional ones? What do these sources say about that?
Well, one that jumps out is using common law principles.
Common law. Isn't that like ancient history?
It might seem like that. But common law, which is based on precedents and customs, not written laws, is actually the foundation of the legal systems in lots of English-speaking countries, including the U.S.
So it's like the bedrock of our legal system.
You could say that. And these sources argue that common law principles can be used to challenge laws and regulations they believe are unjust or unconstitutional.
So using the past to challenge the present.
It's an interesting concept, right? They also talk about common law remedies individuals can use to address wrongs against them, like filing suits for trespass, nuisance, or defamation. It's about empowering people to take action and stand up for their rights.
That's fascinating, but common law always seemed a bit mysterious to me.
It can be. It's important to have a solid grasp of the history and the legal precedents.
Right. You can't just start quoting Shakespeare in court.
Definitely not. But it's about understanding those principles of justice and fairness that underpin our legal system and using those to protect your rights.
So seeking justice, not just winning a legal battle.
Exactly. Now, another less conventional approach they mention is maritime law.
Maritime law. Isn't that for pirates and ships?
Maritime law, also known as admiralty law, governs everything that happens at sea, navigable waters. It has its own unique set of rules and procedures.
Okay, I'm not sure how that applies to us landlubbers. What does that have to do with personal freedom and financial independence?
That's a great question. These sources suggest that certain aspects of maritime law can actually be used for land-based transactions and legal stuff.
Okay, now you've got my attention. How does that work?
Well, they propose that if you understand maritime law principles, you could potentially challenge the jurisdiction of courts and government agencies, assert your rights as a creditor, or even avoid certain tax liabilities. It's a bold claim, but it fits with their whole idea of thinking outside the box. Exploring those unconventional ways of asserting your rights and protecting your interests.
It almost sounds like legal alchemy, turning maritime law into land-based solutions. But I'm guessing it's not as easy as just saying, I'm a sovereign citizen of the high seas.
Definitely not. Applying maritime law to situations on land is a complex and controversial area of law. It's essential to get professional legal advice before you even consider using it.
Okay, so we've covered so many different legal and financial strategies from the conventional to the more unconventional. But there seems to be a deeper layer to all of this, something beyond just the practical stuff.
You're right. There's definitely a spiritual and philosophical thread woven through these sources that informs their unique approach to freedom and independence.
Okay, I'm interested. Tell me about that deeper meaning. What kind of principles do they highlight?
Well, one major theme is natural law.
Natural law. What is that exactly?
It's a philosophy that suggests there are inherent laws and principles that govern how humans behave and how society works. They exist independently of any laws or regulations we create. It's like a higher law that transcends any government or legal system.
So aligning ourselves with a higher moral order, something outside the control of any human authority.
Exactly. And these sources argue that natural law is the basis of true freedom and justice. They say any laws we create that conflict with natural law are illegitimate and should be challenged.
So like saying we have certain rights simply because we're human and no government or institution can take those away.
Precisely. They suggest that by understanding natural law and living in accordance with it, we can reclaim our inherent rights and build a more just world.
It's a beautiful idea. Recognizing our worth as human beings, no matter our social status or financial situation.
Absolutely. Now, alongside natural law, they also emphasize self-reliance.
Self-reliance. Isn't that a bit of a rugged individualist ideal?
Self-reliance can be seen that way, but it's also about recognizing your own power to create the life you want.
So taking responsibility for your own life no matter what.
Exactly. They want people to develop their skills, knowledge and resources so they don't have to rely on systems and institutions, which aligns with their goal of reducing financial pressures.
It's like empowering yourself to build the life you want, not waiting for someone else to hand it to you.
Precisely. They argue that self-reliance can bring you greater freedom, security, and even make you a more valuable member of society.
So it's about both personal and collective empowerment.
Exactly. Now, it's not about isolating yourself. Community is still important.
Right. We're not talking about becoming hermits.
No, it's about finding that sweet spot between taking responsibility for yourself and recognizing the value of community and support. Being responsible, but independent.
So self-sufficient, but also connected and collaborative.
Well put. Now, another principle they talk about is the power of intention.
Intention. Isn't that just wishful thinking?
It's more than wishing. It's about setting clear goals, focusing your energy, and taking action to make those desires happen.
So aligning your thoughts, feelings, and actions to achieve a specific outcome.
Exactly. These sources suggest that by setting clear intentions and taking action, people can actually create positive change in their lives and the world around them. That can be especially powerful when overcoming financial struggles.
So it's about being intentional with your choices, not just letting life happen to you.
That's it. They argue that intention is a powerful force that can help you overcome obstacles, achieve your goals, and live a more fulfilling life.
It's about believing in yourself and your ability to make a difference, even when things are hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But remember, intention alone isn't enough. You need to back it up with action.
Right. It's not magic.
Exactly. Intention sets the course, but action is what gets you there.
So aligning your intentions with your actions, walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Well said. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about some practical ways to cultivate self-reliance and achieve financial independence.
I'm all ears.
Well, one thing they stress is the importance of financial literacy.
Financial literacy. Isn't that just about balancing your checkbook?
It's much more than that. It's about understanding how money works, how to manage your finances effectively, and how to make smart decisions with your money.
So it's about taking control of your finances, not letting them control you.
Exactly. They talk about learning about budgeting, saving, investing, managing debt.
So building a solid foundation and understanding the basics of how money works.
Precisely. They say that financial literacy can help you avoid common mistakes, build wealth, and achieve financial security.
It's like giving yourself the tools and knowledge to make good choices and build a more secure future.
Absolutely. And another thing they highlight is entrepreneurship.
Entrepreneurship, that's just for risk takers, right? Those big business people.
It's not just about starting a company. It's about having an entrepreneurial mindset and seeking out opportunities.
So being creative and resourceful, finding ways to make money from your passions.
Exactly. These sources want people to find their passions, figure out what people need, and create innovative solutions.
It's like finding your niche, contributing to the world, and creating abundance for yourself all at the same time.
Exactly. They argue that entrepreneurship gives you a chance to make your own opportunities, build wealth, and achieve more freedom and flexibility.
So taking control of your career, your income, creating a work life that's both fulfilling and financially rewarding.
That's the idea. Now, entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. It takes a lot of work and dedication, and there's always risk involved.
Right. It's not some get-rich-quick scheme.
Definitely not. But for those willing to put in the work, it can be a really rewarding path to financial independence.
So it's about finding your path, aligning it with your passions and goals, and being willing to hustle to make it happen.
Well said. Now, another strategy they suggest for achieving financial independence is investing.
Investing, that's for Wall Street experts, right?
Investing is about putting your money to work for you. It's not just about stocks and bonds. It's about understanding how different types of assets work and building a portfolio that fits your risk tolerance and financial goals.
So it's about growing your wealth over time, creating security for the future.
Exactly. They encourage people to learn about different approaches to investing, like value investing, growth investing, and income investing.
Find what works for you.
Exactly. They argue that if you invest wisely, you can build wealth, create passive income streams, and achieve that financial security we're talking about.
It's like building a solid financial future for yourself and your family.
Absolutely. Now, it's important to remember that investing always involves some risk. There are no guarantees.
Right. You can't predict the market.
Exactly. Do your research, understand the risks, and get professional advice before making any decisions.
Informed decisions and risk management. Got it.
Now, let's talk about the more practical side of living a self-reliant and financially independent life.
Okay, what do they say about the day-to-day realities of putting these principles into practice?
One thing they emphasize is frugality.
Frugality.
Yeah.
Isn't that just a fancy word for being cheap?
Frugality is about being mindful of your spending and making conscious choices with your money.
So living within your means, making the most of what you have.
Exactly. They suggest tracking your spending, finding ways to cut back, and making saving and investing a priority.
Making your money work for you, not wasting it.
That's it. They say that living a more frugal life can free up money to invest, reduce debt, and get you to financial independence faster.
So living simply and intentionally, focusing on what really matters.
Exactly. They also talk about developing practical skills.
Practical skills, like what?
Things like gardening, cooking, basic home repairs, first aid.
So taking care of yourself and your family without having to rely on someone else for everything.
Precisely. They argue that having these practical skills makes you less dependent, saves you money, and makes you more resilient.
It's about being more self-sufficient.
Exactly. Now, learning these skills takes time and effort.
You don't become a master gardener or a DIY expert overnight.
Definitely not. But even small steps can make a big difference over time.
So making those small changes, learning bit by bit.
Exactly. Now, another thing they emphasize is building community.
Community. I thought self-reliance was all about going it alone.
It's about individual responsibility, but not isolation.
So finding that balance between independence and needing other people.
Exactly. They suggest that by building strong connections with family, friends, and neighbors, you create a support network, share resources, and build resilience.
It's about having people you can count on when things get tough and being part of something bigger than yourself.
That's it. They argue that community is really important for everyone and can provide a sense of belonging, purpose, and security.
So creating a web of support that helps you navigate challenges and work toward freedom and independence.
Exactly. Now, building a strong community takes time and effort.
Right. Relationships don't just magically appear.
You have to be intentional, reach out to people, and nurture those connections.
So making the effort to connect with people and build that support system.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about some of the mental and emotional aspects of pursuing freedom and independence.
Okay, the inner game of freedom. I'm all for it.
One key thing they emphasize is mindset.
Mindset. Isn't that just about thinking positive thoughts?
It's more than that. It's about having beliefs and attitudes that empower you to take charge of your life.
So believing in yourself, knowing you can succeed even when things get tough.
Exactly. They encourage a growth mindset, believing that you can develop your abilities through hard work and dedication.
So seeing challenges as opportunities to learn and grow, not reasons to give up.
Exactly. They also talk about being optimistic and focusing on the positive, even when things are hard.
So believing things will work out, even when you're going through tough times.
That's it. They argue that a positive mindset can help you overcome obstacles and live a more fulfilling life.
It's about believing in yourself even when others doubt you.
Exactly. Another psychological element they discuss is emotional resilience.
Emotional resilience. What's that?
It's that ability to bounce back from setbacks, cope with stress, and keep a positive attitude even when things get difficult.
So being able to handle life's ups and downs without getting totally derailed.
You got it. They say that emotional resilience is essential for achieving freedom and independence because the journey is not always easy.
Yeah, it's not like a straight line to success. There are going to be bumps along the way.
Absolutely. And they offer different ways to build that resilience, things like gratitude, mindfulness, and self-care.
So taking care of your mental and emotional well-being, which is super important when you're trying to make big changes.
Exactly. They argue that emotional resilience helps you deal with challenges more effectively and stay motivated on your journey.
It's about having the inner strength to keep going.
Exactly. Building emotional resilience takes time and effort.
Right. No quick fixes here.
Nope. It's about learning healthy ways to cope, being aware of your emotions, and asking for help when you need it.
So taking care of yourself and knowing you don't have to do it all alone.
That's right. And one more thing they talk about that can really hold people back are those limiting beliefs.
Limiting beliefs. I've heard that term before. But what are they exactly?
They're those negative thoughts and assumptions we have about ourselves, the ones that stop us from reaching our full potential. It might be, I'm bad with money, or I'll never be debt-free, things like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've all had those thoughts.
Exactly. And the problem is they can become self-fulfilling prophecies. If you believe you're not good with money, you might not make the best financial choices.
So how do we overcome these limiting beliefs?
Well, first, you have to be aware of them. Just noticing them is a huge step. Once you know what they are, you can start to challenge them and replace them with beliefs that empower you.
So changing the script, going from I can't do this to I can do this and here's how.
Exactly. Another thing they suggest is surrounding yourself with positive and supportive people. If you're always around negativity, it's tough to stay positive and believe in yourself. Find those people who uplift you and believe in your potential.
Makes sense. The people we're around can really affect our mindset. Now, we've talked a lot about the practical and the psychological stuff, but it feels like there's also a deeper, more spiritual layer to these sources.
You're absolutely right. They go beyond just the practical tips and touch on some pretty profound spiritual principles that form the basis of their approach.
Okay, I'm curious. Tell me more about these spiritual principles.
One is the importance of connecting with your higher self.
Okay, that sounds a little out there. What does that mean exactly?
It's not tied to any specific religion. It's more about recognizing that there's a part of you connected to something bigger, something you might call intuition, inner wisdom, or even your spiritual source.
So tapping into your inner wisdom to help you make decisions and navigate life.
Exactly, exactly. These sources suggest different practices to connect with your higher self. Things like meditation, prayer, journaling, spending time in nature.
So quieting the mind and listening to your intuition.
Exactly. They argue that by connecting with your higher self, you can get more clarity and guidance on your journey to freedom and independence.
It's like finding that inner compass to help you navigate life's ups and downs.
Absolutely. Another principle they discuss is the power of forgiveness.
Forgiveness. I thought that was more about the person who did something wrong.
Forgiveness is about a lot more than that. It's about letting go of anger and resentment, which can be really freeing.
So it's not saying what they did was okay, but freeing yourself from the negativity.
You got it. These sources say that forgiveness is key to finding true freedom, because if you hold on to that anger and resentment, you're stuck in the past.
It's like carrying around all that baggage.
Exactly. They suggest different ways to cultivate forgiveness, like trying to understand the other person's perspective and making a conscious decision to let go of the hurt.
So it's a process, not just something that happens overnight.
That's right. But it's worth it. Forgiveness can free you from the past, bring more peace into your present, and help you move forward.
It's like breaking free from chains of resentment and anger.
Yeah.
Really powerful stuff.
Absolutely. And another thing they emphasize is gratitude.
Gratitude. Isn't that just about being thankful?
Gratitude is more than just saying thank you. It's about truly appreciating the good things in your life, even the small stuff, shifting your focus to what you have, not what you're missing.
So it's about training yourself to see the positive.
That's the idea. They argue that gratitude is a powerful force that can really change your life, increase your happiness, reduce stress, and just improve your well-being overall.
It's like choosing to see the glass as half full.
Exactly. And they even suggest that gratitude can actually attract more good things into your life.
Like the idea that what you focus on grows.
Precisely. They want people to make gratitude a daily habit, whether it's through journaling, meditation, or just taking a few minutes to think about what you're thankful for.
So building that habit of gratitude.
Exactly. Now, we've talked about a lot of spiritual principles. Do they give any practical advice on actually using them in your life?
I'd love to hear about that.
Well, they really emphasize meditation.
Meditation.
Yeah.
Isn't that just for monks and like spiritual gurus?
It's a practice that's been used for centuries to calm the mind, relieve stress, and connect with your inner self. You don't have to be religious to meditate. It's just about finding that stillness and peace within.
I could see how that would be helpful for anyone, especially in our busy world.
Absolutely. They suggest even just a few minutes of meditation each day can make a big difference in managing stress, improving focus, and cultivating inner peace.
So making time for quiet and stillness.
Exactly. They also recommend journaling.
Journaling. That's just for teenagers, right?
Journaling can be really helpful for self-reflection, dealing with emotions, and gaining clarity. It doesn't matter how old you are. It's about getting your thoughts and feelings out on paper, without censoring yourself, just expressing yourself authentically.
So it's like having a conversation with yourself, processing your experiences and getting to know yourself better.
Exactly. They suggest that writing regularly can give you a lot of insight into your beliefs and patterns, which can help you make positive changes.
It's like being your own therapist.
You could say that. And besides meditation and journaling, they also talk about how important it is to spend time in nature.
Nature. Isn't that just about getting fresh air?
Spending time outdoors can be incredibly restorative, both mentally and physically. It's about connecting with the natural world, experiencing beauty, and peace.
So it's about getting away from the screens, the noise, and just being in nature.
Exactly. They suggest that nature has a calming and grounding effect. It can reduce stress, boost creativity, and improve your mood. It's like hitting the reset button.
I love that. We could all use a little bit of that.
Absolutely. They encourage people to find ways to get some nature into their everyday lives, even if it's just a walk in the park, gardening, hiking, or just sitting outside and enjoying the scenery.
So making time for nature, even if you live in a busy city.
Exactly. Now, as we wrap up our look at these documents, I think it's important to remember that some of the ideas here are unconventional, even a bit controversial. It's always smart to be critical, do your own research, and get professional guidance when you need it.
You're right. We're not saying everyone should go out and start challenging court jurisdictions or anything like that.
Exactly. This deep dive is meant to be a starting point, something to spark your curiosity and get you thinking about different perspectives on freedom, independence, and financial well-being. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge and using that knowledge to create the life you want.
It's about taking control of your life, making your own choices, and recognizing you have more power than you might think.
Well said. Even if you don't agree with everything here, I think it's valuable to just open your mind to new possibilities.
Absolutely. It's about challenging the way we usually think about things and exploring different paths. That can be really liberating.
Exactly. So as we finish up, I want you to think about what resonated with you, what sparked your curiosity, what steps can you take, big or small, to bring more freedom, independence, and financial well-being into your life.
Those are some great questions to consider. And remember, this is just the start. There's always something new to learn, to explore, to discover.
Keep diving deep and never stop seeking knowledge and empowerment.
Until next time.